Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the launch of the STB in the Tourism Innovation Challenge for MICE. My name is Derek. My team and I at Padang & Co. have been tasked by STB to help them organize and run this particular challenge. So you'll be seeing quite a bit of us at various events and also via email as well. To kick us off this afternoon, I'd like to invite Po Chi Chuan, the Director of Digital Transformation at STB, to introduce STB as well as the challenge itself. Chi Chuan?
Thank you, Derek. Okay, so that's me, and no, that's Peter. All right, here we go. So thank you everyone for turning up on the wet Friday afternoon. My name is Chi Chuan, as Derek has said. Today we are launching our MICE challenge, right? So before I begin my slides, a great shout out to support from Sasios and Janet, Peter for turning up today. Basically, what does STB do? Well, we basically make Singapore attractive for tourists to come, and we develop the industry so that we become a thriving economy for Singapore. And to do that, basically, there are several functions. And today, what we are doing largely falls under the ambit of industry development, right? Because we are helping industry to shape up, to meet up with the tech challenges, and that's the reason why we do the Innovation Challenge. And these are the 6 industries that STB champions, right? So attractions, cruise, hotels, the integrated resorts, travel agents, travel guides, as well as BT MICE. Last year, we hosted 17.4 million tourists to Singapore, right? And we collected about 26.8 billion worth of tourism receipts. This is a record high. And this year, we are on track, at least from the latest statistics. We're very confident that we should be able to clear the 18 million mark. And hopefully, our tourism receipts will also reach a record high. Now, in that, arrivals, 15% of the arrivals are formed by visitors who declare that they are here for business travels, meetings, incentives, convention and exhibitions. And of that 15%, they contributed 34% of tourism receipts. So from that figure alone, you realize that this is a very important market for us because these visitors punch above their weight. They spend more than other visitors. And that's the reason why it is a very important segment that we always keep our eyes on. And it's still going to grow, right? So based on this research that we have from Allied Market Research, MICE is going to grow to $1 trillion by 2020. The market is going to grow to $1 trillion, right? In terms of market value by 2023. And an average CAGR is around 7.5%. So where do you think is the fastest growing region in the world? APAC, right? And where do you think Singapore stands? Now if APAC is that, I would say, iceberg that sticks out of the water, Singapore is right at the tip, right? Our growth is around 10% CAGR in terms of market value, right? And so therefore, I think today it's very excited to see so much of you here, so many of you here, because MICE is going to be really a thriving, we are really at the pinnacle of growth. So we hope that you guys take a good look at the 7 challenge statements that we have and be able to contribute to the growth of this sector as well. But even though we are right at the top, there are a lot of challenges that faces us at this moment in time, right? Cost is one, right? Singapore is not a cheap destination, right? We face a lot of competition, right? So just take a good look around our neighbors. Everyone is building spanking infrastructure, putting in content. So a lot of people wants to knock us off the perch, right? Customers, today you guys are very well informed. Customers are very well informed. Everything is a Google away. So they have expectations for us from a destination perspective, from a content provider perspective, from a MICE perspective. What do you have in store for me that is worth me coming to your place, right? And manpower constraint, okay? So, but this is not something which is only peculiar to the MICE sector. You take the MICE out, you put in any sector, be it hotels, be it tours and travel, it applies. So these are common constraints that faces us day in, day out. And last year, we did a hotel challenge. We had 7 challenge statements, we received 28 proposals, and we commissioned 18 projects for pilot. I'm glad to say that almost all the pilots have still, they're on track and they're doing quite well. At the same time, we did a challenge for the travel agents and travel tour guides, and we received we had 5 challenge statements, 25 proposals, we commissioned 5 projects, right? So for the past 2 months, the team is working very hard with Sacios and the MICE partners, and this time around we came up with, again, 7 challenge statements. How much proposals are we going to receive really depends on you guys. And then therefore that becomes a leading indicator to the next one, which is how much project are we going to co-fund, right? Okay, so this is really what we are here for today, right? We are launching the challenge today, and basically I think Derek will share some of the submission criteria. How do you then submit? And basically from now to October, Padang will, and together with us, will help to shortlist those submissions, fine-tune them, and basically we are gearing up for 16th of November, where we matchmake you with MICE partners. And if you are able to find a partner that is willing to co-op the project and run the pilot, right, then you can submit a grant proposal to us. And it will be, we target somewhere around mid of December, right? And then you can break for Christmas, right? Then that is where we work hard to scrum through all this stuff. And basically, we will come back to you to see, before Chinese New Year, whether or not the projects get selected for funding, right? So the funding criteria is very easy. You have to be a Singapore registered entity. You can submit the proposal on your own, or you can be a consortium, right? Now, as with the previous innovation challenges, we fund up to 70% of the pilot cost, right? But the important thing is you need to have a partner to pilot with. So the MICE stakeholders are here, right? They are the ones that sponsored the challenge statement, so you have somebody to partner with, and we will then basically, throughout the course of next year, basically the selected projects will also be shown in various industry platforms, all right? So with that, I wish you all the best, and I now then pass the mic back to Derek. Thank you.
Thank you, Chi Chuan. So Chi Chuan talked about the part where you submit the grant proposal. Later, I'll come back at the end of this session to talk about the process leading up to that point. But in the meantime, to give us an introduction to the MICE industry itself, we've got the Executive Director of Sacios, which is the Singapore Association for Convention and Exhibition Organizers and Suppliers, Peter Xiao.
Very good afternoon to everyone. Actually, I'm very overwhelmed by the support and the turnout today. It's very heartwarming. I come from the technology world myself, and now I'm the other side of the industry, which is in MICE. Such a good thing, such a good feeling to see the marriage of two great industry, the technology and the MICE. First up, who is Sacios? We are the association positioned to bring Singapore up the map, to position us as the global hub for the industry. What we do is we are the champion voice for the business meetings, okay? And we are a key partner with STB and many of the government agencies, representing over 100 organizations in Singapore, okay, and representing the business meetings. We set the direction for the development of business MICE growth, as well as we promote the best practices and standards. Adopting technology is one of which is the key facets of which that we see as an enabler for business growth, as well as productivity, and therefore we are very happy to be here to be engaging each and every one of you. So how do we lead the industry and drive the growth of Singapore? First up, we look at people. We look at workers coming in fresh into the industry, and how do we help them to accelerate the growth. At the same time, we also look at skills within the industry of which that they can come together, be it whether they're freelancers or they're professionals, on which that they can be actively be engaged in the right piece of job and to be available professionally for whichever projects that may come through. Secondly, we are also providing the annual platforms for business and engagement, not just within Singapore, but we are also the hub whereby our Singapore MICE Forum is the world's leading platform whereby we bring together the whole ecosystem of associations from around the world. They will congregate here in Singapore and they will have an active meeting sessions over 1 week. At the same time, we'll look at business transformation. Okay, these two reports that we called up from the international report shows that Singapore is the top city of choice when in Asia Pacific for international meetings. The first one on the left shows you that Singapore is just below Brussels, and the number of meetings that we have conducted in that year is close to 900. Okay, this is a percentage, about 9% of the whole total. So in that, you can see that against all the other Asian cities, Singapore is really very poised, very well positioned, and international organizations, be it whether they are far or near, they always choose Singapore as the choice destination. Okay. Secondly, Singapore is also the choice city for associations coming together, and we are the top city as compared to the rest of the other Asia Pacific. Okay. There are three trends that impacts the events industry. Firstly, convergence in the new innovation. Okay. Technology is a way of life now, all right? But how do we put together the whole convergence of this whole experiences such that it brings about whereby the exchange of communication, the exchange of flow through would happen. At the same time, what we see is that how do we engage attendees, especially in this whole multidisciplinary arena? Okay, there are two trends. One is the rise of event technology and the emergence of the new millennial generation. Secondly, meetings have become a lot more unstructured. You may call it, there's a new term called festivalization. How many of you have heard of festivalization? So I see the hands that are up are really those who are in the MICE industry, but not technology. It may be a new word to you, but imagine this. Going to business meetings, all right, plus in a whole atmosphere of which that it is more social, more networking, more fun, and out of the box kind of environment, creating it as if it is like going into a festival. So there's a mix of fun and play as well as important meetings. So how do we merge this whole experiences, creating this such that there is also impactful returns when it comes to business meetings, at the same time to the individuals who are attending it, that there is also a whole fun element in it. 3, we see that business meetings become a lot more experiential. Marketing of business meetings is never the same as before. It's no longer as it was whereby you just look at attendees, but you actually look at the impact on the attendees. You look at how business ecosystems and business models are being formed. You also look at how business planners come together whereby they could also form agile work groups. For example, pull together what we call the gig community, whereby they could be experts in their own field, designing, event planning, and they come together to plan and execute a program, and then after that, they leave. All right. At the same time, for the experience for a delegate that attends the events or business meetings, what kind of experience do we want to portray? And for an event planner, we ask ourselves, how do we create and track them for all the various moments of truth, okay, that we can better engage and improve on our processes in the future. Okay. Digitalization is the buzzword. How do we embrace digitalization in this whole MICE economy? And I think this is where the challenge is for us within the industry on how do we put this into the whole equation. Asia Pacific, based on reports done by UFI, which is the world body for exhibition, that digitalization adoption in Asia Pacific is actually quite low. And therefore, it presents to us a great opportunity whereby solutions can be the growth enabler, the solutions enabler for the problems that our sector face. Right, so as I was saying, in Asia Pacific, the world score is 32, but Asia Pacific is actually below the world score rate. So there's actually quite a good room for us to move. Okay, so what does this all mean? This seems to be an outdated report as compared to my colleague earlier on, but what it all means is that whatever we do, okay, MICE as a destination will have got actually a double impact contribution for business travelers as against leisure travelers. So I hope that with the solutions that you help us with, that our business events industry would continue to thrive and continue to make Singapore the most preferred destination in the world for business visitors. So I thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. I see that some of you are taking pictures of the slides. Don't worry, though, we're going to put the slide deck as well as video recordings of the presentations online on the website. So look out for the email that we send you so that you can actually access those things. Next in the program, we're going to invite a number of experts to come out to you to go a little bit deeper into the problem statements themselves. So as you guys come in, you would have received a piece of paper with all the challenge statements. I hope you have taken the time to read them. These challenges have been actually surfaced through a series of industry consultations, and we've arrived with these statements. So first up, to explain these problem statements covering spotting trends for event content, I invite Richard Ireland, Managing Director, Asia for Clarion Events. Richard?
Good afternoon, everybody. Well, it's such an active group. It's really a pleasure to be here. And thank you to the Tourism Board for inviting us and leading this initiative. Well, just a very quick thing before I talk about the challenges. One of the challenges that we should consider is we do operate in a very competitive market regionally. And while that is a challenge, one of the really good things about our industry is the visitors and attendees and delegates and exhibitors that attend events in Singapore are typically very high-value customers. And what does that mean? Well, translated into my business, exhibition business, people pay one of the highest per square metre rates in the region. People pay one of the highest delegate rates in the region. So I suppose that sort of comes to the opportunity or the challenge, is that there are very high expectations. When you pay a lot, you expect a lot. And that's where I think there's the opportunity to narrow the gap between the expectation and perhaps the delivery. Before I just get into this, as an industry, I think the MICE, and I'll only talk about the C&E, which is the convention and exhibition, I think it'd be fair to say we haven't really embraced technology as much. We've looked at other parts of media which have been chronically disrupted over the last 20 years, such as traditional newspapers and magazines, and said fantastic live events have not been disrupted. Perhaps that made it a little complacent. But I suppose the definition of disruption is you don't really know until it's there that you're actually being disrupted. So I think this is, again, a good opportunity for us to embrace some changes which are probably long overdue in our industry. So a typical event, content is very, very, very important. So what's the challenge? The challenge of content creation is a few-fold. Number one, currently, when you put together some content, you almost have to be a futurist. You have to predict the future. If I'm working on a piece of an event for March of next year, if I look at it in today's lens, it's already out of date by March next year. And in fact, I don't go to an event in March next year to learn about March next year. I'm going to learn about the future. So much content that we produce is already out of date. I mean, it's actually quite interesting because often in my job, I don't get to actually talk about problems. I'm just expected to bring the solution. So I'm just going to talk about the problems today. So there's a time lag in content creation. So that when it comes around, often it's out of date. I think this is a real challenge, number one. Number two, when I started my career, I started out in content, and I produced about 30 conferences before I moved into the exhibition business. I reflect upon how I did that. A totally manual process. When I talk to my staff about producing content pre-internet, they cannot believe that could even exist. We used to have stacks of newspapers and trade publications and go to libraries. Can you imagine going to a library to produce a conference? It actually happened. So we have the internet now, which is great. But we trawl through the internet, we look at articles, we try and get some trends, but it's very, very, very manual. We then look at last year's delegate list. We call up people who attended last year, which again, they may not have been the people we want to attend next year. So perhaps we are even researching the wrong group of people. Again, very, very, very manual and very value judgment, very value-based rather than as in my values rather than industry values. And then what we do, we put our own spin on it. And one of the real challenges around content creation, like any curation, is the fact that the curator will drive the outcomes. But that's not necessarily industry outcomes. And again, there can be a bit of a mismatch. And that has two problems. The problem number one is often the representation of the curator may not represent industry. And then there's how do you create process around the curator when the curator changes. It's really interesting. I've seen it in my organization. A conference one year looking radically different from another year. And it's not the fact that the industry changed, it's just that the lens changed. So I really see there's three major challenges: the time lag, the very manual process, and the very subjective but not objective way of collection of themes, ideas, and that come to create the conference and to create the content, whether that's content on floor, whether that's content in its traditional sense. So, and also the fact that how do we store our ideas and how do we store our feedback, and then how do we get feedback and then translate it to the future years. So that's, and then I think, again, just looking at some of the problems, fragmentation, whether people really want to move into content and content curation, and then again, back to the last one really around who, most of our research is based on who did attend previously rather than who should attend in the future. So I will leave it at that, and hopefully you'll come up with some fabulous solutions.
Thank you, Richard. And next, I'd like to invite the community manager at SingX, Magda Kwalikong, to talk about engaging freelancers for event design, planning, and tracking waste at events.
Hello, welcome, good afternoon. I'm very new to the MICE industry, so thank you for welcoming me here, and it's amazing to meet so many interested people. I'm going to share about my personal problem. So the first one which I would like to talk about is about the freelancers. So maybe some of you already know, but maybe not. I like to call myself community builder. I'm trying to build up an online community of specialists coming from different industries. So I'm looking at Industry 4.0 developments, at IoT, blockchain, and whatsoever, right? And when I started to map out the project, I have realized I need a lot of resources. I need a lot of people who are going to help me. So when I estimated budget, I supposed to burn in the first year 1 million just to hire these people. So obviously I was trying to be as creative as possible and look at the ways how I can actually find the skills which I need, But in the same time, I don't have to hire somebody full-time to stay with me, but just provide the services as needed. And what I have discovered actually, that the mice industry is not so straightforward and easy to understand as I thought. And when I was actually looking at the different options and different ways of collaboration, I noticed that the freelancers actually are those who are very popular in the mice industry for many, many reasons. Usually they will be very fast in response, the quality of the work is mostly there, mostly not, depends. We have also a lot of people who are just like to geek because they have a particular sets of skills. They do programming, for example. They specialize in gamifications of different software and whatsoever. So when I was actually looking at those right skills, I was thinking, okay, let's step back. Let's see actually what is happening in the workforces, why I cannot find the right people for my project, why I cannot find the right skills. Is it because of the Singaporean model? Is it because globally I cannot find the skills, or what is happening? And I did some actually research. So you can see that actually based on the studies from USA, by 2020, 33% of the total workforces is going to be hired as a freelancers, and they are going to generate a turnover of $1 trillion. In Singapore, by 2020, we're going to have up to 15% of people employed as a freelancers, and globally, according to the Stanford University study, by 2030, 80% of us will be freelancers. So when I was looking at the landscape, I wanted really to understand where are the challenges, where is the problem actually? Because I was thinking maybe my personal experience is not exactly what the industry is seeing, it's not exactly what we are actually should focusing on. But when I started to dig a little bit deeper, I noticed that for the freelancers, they have usually problems, for example, with payment. There is no trust relationship, so they don't know whether they got paid or not. Another part is that the quality of the jobs which are getting is not really matching their skills. And for the employees, it's time consuming. You have to brief the person, you have to bring on board the person, you have to explain what is your project about. Till the process is over, you're already done. You're already thinking, okay, I just don't want to do it, right? So I think the problem boils down to one, the lack of trust and quality of work and the lack of skills. And another part is that we have difficulties to identify the right candidates quickly and have a long-term relationship. A lot of people, they work on the basis touch and go. So what I was thinking about is actually, as a community person, obviously, why don't we have a global community of freelancers? So I was thinking, okay, it's easier said than done, but how we can actually enable people to qualify to freelancers, how we can make sure that this global community is going to thrive. And one day I was thinking about it, and I was like playing a game. And then I have realized that actually if we can gamify the experience, we can actually achieve something what is very, very interesting. So I was thinking about the blockchain technology. We have now a lot of cryptocurrencies. So imagine that you as a freelancer are partaking in this particular community, and you are actually acquiring new so-called community money, so blockchain, let's say, for example, cryptocurrency, because you are contributing to the community, because you are executing some projects, because you are actually taking up some projects and get reviews. And then your actually score is getting higher and higher, but the higher your score, the bigger projects you can see. So the content is tailored automatically to the experiences and to the points which you have collected. And then I was thinking the payment problem is another issue, right? But what if we're going, again, use the cryptocurrency, and we are going to actually use an escrow as a model to deploy the cryptocurrencies and pay and exchange the services. So this was actually my idea behind that, but it's easier said than done. So if any of you is able to create this kind of community with me and help me to execute this kind of model, please look for me after the presentations. There is another problem in the mice industry which I have discovered. So it's a little bit self-discovery, mice discovery. And it's a problem of waste. I am not sure whether you're aware actually, but generally in Singapore we have a problem with waste. We have actually only one spot which is left for us to deposit the waste and do something about it. But when I was looking at the mice industry, I was thinking, we are actually quite well organized. We think about the sustainability, we are trying to use degradable materials, we are trying to actually find the ways how we can optimize processes. But the one thing which we always struggle with is food. Somehow, interestingly, according to our Ministry of Environment and Water Resources, we have produced last year 800 tons of food, which was 16% out of it was recycled. I was really shocked that actually we are such a small island and we are able to produce so much food. I love to eat, you probably as well, but I have never expected that we are having actually so much waste. And then I was started to look at the chain. What is happening here? Why there is such a big problem? And it happened that I understood that we have 3 different parties playing here together. So on the one hand side, we have organizers and venue owners. On the other hand side, we have caterers. And we have also participants, delegates, visitors, speakers. And those people, they have different issues why actually they produce waste. For us, for example, because we're visitors, we just don't like the food. We don't eat it, right? But for the organizers, they have actually predict how many visitors they are going to have, how they can avoid the food waste. And at the end of the day, I think there are 3 different points which we can look at when we are trying to solve this problem. First part is about the visitorship. So what I noticed is that paid delegates turn up to 90%. So 90% of your sold tickets will probably come to your exhibition hall. But if you have visitors who didn't purchase the ticket, it's very unpredictable. The numbers are between 40 to 60%. So in order actually to avoid or increase the number of unpaid visitors who want to attend because they have already received the tickets, maybe we should go look again at the cryptocurrency model. If we, for example, reward the person for coming back with the ticket to the exhibition hall and redeem it against some small token. Another part, I think, is the food distribution chain. Currently at the MICE events, we have a lot of very traditional setups, right? Buffet, standing, the food is open. Afterwards, we don't want to eat it because it's cold or doesn't taste nice and whatsoever. But what if we have a smart dispensing system which is going to help us to deliver the food on demand? And then another model which I think is very interesting is when we prepare the menu for the events, we should do a much more data information analysis, because I found out, I didn't know, that if we're organizing an event for a target group between 20 and 30 years old, your food's supposed to be fanciful, look appetizing, to be in the small bites. It shouldn't be traditional menu, which we usually would choose. It would be like bihun and something what is, goes well with bihun or whatsoever. So this is another part. And the last point, I think, is the sustainability. I think that we as organizers and as exhibitors are responsible for taking the food waste into consideration when we prepare, organize, execute, and complete the exhibitions. And that's why I was thinking, why don't we have any scoring system? Why don't we have actually any system which is going to help us to build up something like a reputation record? If you are going to contribute during the exhibition and after exhibition to recycle the food waste, if you are going to launch some ideas and initiatives which are going to support the overall strategy that we want to have 0 food waste, why don't we should reward those people? Why we shouldn't actually create a good record for them and, for example, in future give them some kind of rewards or discounts or something similar? But as you can see, the problem is very complex, has a lot of intricacies. So I think if you have good ideas how we can address it together, that would be fantastic. So again, please look for me. I think that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Magda. So if you guys have questions for Magda, Richard, and the upcoming speaker, Glenn, They will come back here for a panel, a Q&A panel, so hold your questions. And afterwards, they will also stick around and as part of the networking session for you guys to ask questions. So next, I'd like to invite Glenn Tan, Account and Business Development Manager for Pacific World, to talk about tracking event delegates as well as the vehicle fleet.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. And thank you, STB, for the invitation as well. So my name is Glenn. I'm from Pacific World, and I'm an event management company with a very strong DMC foundation because that's how we started. So in difference with Richard, I cover the other side of the MICE sector, which is the conferences, meetings, and incentive programs, right? So that sets the context. And also, today is refreshing because, like what Richard said, we are just telling you our problems, right? So, which is really, really cool. So, and today we are going to talk about instant tracking, and because at this time and age, a lot of expectations from clients is about, I want to know it now, right? Where, what, instantly, and so that is something that this is the kind of expectations that it's our challenge to meet. But at the same time, if the event is small scale, like I would say 200 packs, 400 packs, still reasonable, but once it gets bigger, and this is the trend, Singapore is attracting a lot more big scale events, 1,000 packs and above, that becomes a challenge, all right? So the first problem statement, we are talking about, locating VIPs, locating speakers, important people that you need them at specific time during an event, during a conference. So I'll just go straight to the breakdown. So what is the current situation? For example, imagine a 3-day conference. Every day you have like maybe 10 speakers or 15 speakers, and these speakers have their own agenda. They have you don't know them directly. You have to depend on people to track them, to find them. And imagine the logistic before they go up. You need to make sure they come to the AV console to mic up, to test, or maybe even before that, rehearsal, and 15 minutes before the current speaker is ending, you need to make sure that he's there, sitting down, and not at the toilet, or not at, somewhere else. Or even if he's not there, where is he, right? So this is the kind of challenge we face, especially at big scale. And on top of that, for every event, for certain really, really important bosses, people who are coming to grace the event, it's always a pressure for event organizers as well as our clients to anticipate their arrival, because many times we need to prepare certain welcome hospitality. Somebody got to be at the driveway to say hi, bring them up, because they may not be familiar with the venue. It could be up at 5th floor of MBS, and it could be the first time they are there. So, and of course, the current system, which is in a way manual as well. A lot of events we use LO, liaison officer, or some people call it Velcro, to just stick to these people, right? To just keep getting updates from them. Yeah, if it's 5 speakers, no problem. But what if you have 10, 15, right? You need them to be at this place, that place. Then how? So, like I said, the cause of the problem, the good point about Singapore is that we are attracting a lot bigger and bigger events. So these are the challenges that will get more and more complex, and if there's solutions out there, of course, it will be helpful for us. But some of the things that I would like to highlight as well, in terms of privacy, right? So as much as if I put myself in a VIP shoe, right, how much, what is the kind of comfort level do I want to share with you, with everybody or the event organizer about where I am, right? But at the same time, I know I have a certain responsibility to fulfill because I signed up to be, to speak for your event. So that's one of the concern that we think about. And I think that's the gist of, the first part about tracking humans. So second, vehicle. So many times, conference and all this, there will always be some social events outside, right? And the challenge for us is always like, I have 1,000 people. Can you get us all out to reach this place within an hour, half an hour? So if for the current system that we have, when we transport like people out for dinner, if you have 400 packs, we are looking at 10 coaches, right? 10, 12 coaches, manageable. Everybody on WhatsApp, we have 15 people on WhatsApp, and everybody telling each other, because where are you, we just left, or we are stuck here, it's still all right. But imagine you have 20 people, 25 people, or 30 people on this group chat, updating instantly. It's gonna be very messy for the person. Eventually, I'm standing with my client, and I have to keep telling her like, where's bus number 5? I have to check. Let me scroll through. I need to make a call. You get what I mean? Like, it's the current platform I personally feel is not conducive for effective, huge communications, right? So for current mass transfer, that's the terminology we use. Mass transfer means a huge group of people. We are moving them from point A to point B. We depend on representative onboard individual vehicles, as well as manpower deployed at the various pickup and drop-off point to update, right? Because it's our job to make sure everything is being tracked, right? And we tell our client that, expected what time the last bus is here, expected what the first bus has left, VIP is already on the way, they are reaching 10 minutes time. So we really depends on manpower and existing mass communication platform like Telegram, WhatsApp, for massive transfer. And also, let's say for airport transfer or small vehicle transfer, we depend heavily on the driver to give us update prior to pick up and drop off, because they can't. Which is totally fine, because you shouldn't be texting or communicating while driving, right, for the safety of your client. But that means I am very dependent on a very responsible driver to tell me, especially when I need to track this vehicle. I need to know, I need to prepare the hotel 10 minutes before he arrives, to make sure that everything is set, that people are there waiting for him, etc., etc. Okay? Cause of the problem, like what I said, it's a repeat, like manpower, existing communication platform. It's not optimum. So that is in the gist. These two things, if moving forward, as we see the trend of big events coming, I would think the solution out there, an effective solution, effective, cost-effective, will be of interest, to a lot of industry people outside, to take up. All right, I think that's about it. Thank you very much. So, yeah.
Thank you, Glenn. And to come back and go through the challenge statements under managing and using customer data more efficiently, we have Richard.
Okay, I think this is a really big challenge, and actually this particular challenge and the second challenge is interrelated. So, you can read from the slide. So it's really understanding delegates, but I would also say attendees profiles, and how to communicate with these profiles and really understand their interests. So this is sort of, I would say, part A of the problem. If you can just do the next slide. And then really about understanding their expectations of delegates and attendees, and really getting them great recommendations moving forward. Obviously, this is a problem because we want repeat business. We also, as I was sharing earlier, we want the expectations of our customers to be well met. So I'm going to start right from the beginning. Exhibition organisers have traditionally collected data which is very much based around their exhibitors. And the type of data we've collected is price per square metre, volume, retention, etc., etc. Very, very much financial information. But what we haven't done particularly well is we haven't collected our customers' data particularly well. So while we might know all about exhibitors, we don't know an awful lot about visitors. Very, very, very little about our visitors. So why is this the case? Well, I think I'm going to stand up and say, as an organizer, that's because actually the financial information has historically been more important than the customer. So that's quite a short-term view, but that's just a fact. Obviously, our finance officers think differently from our head of customer officers. That trend is changing. But that's historically why it's been. But then it comes back to this other problem around the data collection. Now, I'm going to be a bit crass here, if that's okay, but I'm going to share with you. So, we're all registered. You know, you got my name, you got my job title, you got where I live. So what does that give you? Typically, actually gives you my name on a badge. That's what it gives you. It doesn't. You don't really ask what I'm interested in doing. You don't, and if you do, I probably won't fill it out. You don't understand my objectives about coming here today, and we don't map it back to whether actually they were met. So we're collecting lots and lots of data, but is it useful data? And for example, I could say to a customer, you saw 100 people in their room, and 50% were female, and 50% were male, and 40% were from the east, and 40% from the west, and all this like age and all this sort of stuff. But what you can't really say is whether I'm interested in any of those. And this is a problem. We're collecting the wrong data, and we're spending a lot of money on registration systems that's only giving us information pre. I think that's the first thing. So when we go to post-show reports or post-event evaluation, of course we ask our exhibitors. Sorry, I'll take that back. We tell our exhibitors, you saw 10,000 people. You know, they were all CEO. And we tell them this. You know, they came from 30% Singapore, great. 70% outside of Singapore, great. Tourism board, very happy. But what we don't say is, did you meet any of your objectives? Did you meet any customers? Did you have any real exchange of ideas? We're not collecting that data. So often when our customers don't come back, we don't actually know. So if you have a look about on post-show reports on websites, we're showing stats as an organizer perspective, but not as an attendee perspective. So what happens post-show? Yes, you get exhibitors, but very rarely do you get visitors. It's very, very difficult after a show has happened for people to spend the time to actually bother to say, I went to that event, this is what I achieved, and this is to rate it. So the data collection comes back to you've got certain demographics, but you haven't got a matching of needs and where the needs are being fulfilled. So what happens? The most effective way, even though I've got this beautiful badge, you have typically students walking around with clipboards asking people, did you like the show? And you might have a show with 50,000 people and you get how many? 200, 300? Poor representation. So this, if you can imagine the cost for people to attend and so forth, there's this poor matching of data flow. Why they were attending, whether objectives were met, and whether they'll come back. So this is quite difficult. So what we as organisers struggle with at times is really understanding customer outcomes, because customer outcomes is different from who attended, and I think this is a real challenge. Now, what as an industry we have started to do is we have started to do some post-show evaluation and surveys, and we've started to get some data which can give us some net promoter score data, which will basically tell us, yes, you will recommend this show to your colleague or your competitor. Is that enough? It's probably not deep enough if you consider the investment. But out of that net promoter score, while exhibitors are probably emotionally and definitely financially bought into it, the exhibitors' customers or the visitors aren't really bought into it. So the value of that data collection and what can be used is very, very, very narrow. And I really feel that's a challenge in getting people to come back if you don't know why they're attending in the first place and whether those objectives have been met. So this is a tricky one, but I think it's a really, really important one. I think it'd be fair to say most of our or on the exhibition side, most of the industry wants to be able to evaluate customer outcomes more effectively, and probably hasn't quite found a solution to do so. So if you can find a challenge and you'd like to partner with Clarion Events, we would love to partner with any of you here. We do about 300 exhibitions a year, so there's a strong incentive for us to get closer to these customer outcomes. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. Indeed, very, very big, chunky problems there. Guys, are we going to do Q&A? Yeah. So now, can I invite back Richard, Magda, and Glenn, and also invite Jonathan Collis, President of Sasios, to do a Q&A with the audience. Questions? Once we get started.
Hello, my name is Ronald, and thank you first of all for holding this event. I think it's fantastically inspirational and great to hear directly from you, ladies and gentlemen. I have a question for Richard in particular. I just signed up this morning for a food event that is at Suntec. It's organized by a Japanese organizer. And I was honored to see that I was pre-invited, but it doesn't mean that I go in. I still need to go online, go to the website, and I've spent about 7 minutes, because I really want to go to that event, filling in a questionnaire of what type of companies do I want to see, why am I there, what is my role in the function in the company, do I have budget decision power, yes or no? So if I'm really honest, I don't understand the challenge. I do understand the challenge, but the Japanese guys already solve it in their way. So Richard, what's the real challenge for Clarion?
I mean, I wouldn't just talk about Clarion. I'd say as an organizer perspective. I think there's, you say an interesting thing. You've identified as this super person, super VIP. I think the first question is, how is that process done? I mean, do you even like Japanese food? Are you free next weekend? But let's just keep that aside for the moment. I think the first thing is a 7 or 8 minute questionnaire pre-show. You will lose some people to go through that process. But let's assume that you did that and did that well. The next challenge really is, once you have all that information, what happens to it? Is that personally distributed to all the exhibitors? Number one. And number two, how is your information distributed to the exhibitors as this super VIP? So I'm saying there's a great effort around the collection and a great effort around certain questions, but what happens next? What happens in that data flow? Because really, if, excuse me, if all that information is collected, if it's not utilized, it really only gives you an expensive badge, correct, which says VIP. And there isn't really a great mechanism to do that. So it comes back to a manual process. So isn't that a strange thing? You know, you have the questionnaire, and then really you'll probably have liaison officers at the show who will bring you to the important sellers if you're an important buyer. But that's a very manual process, and there's a lot of leakage along the way. So I think that's the challenge. I think that's the challenge. And where the opportunity is really to utilize your pre-registration information and then to automate it on site and to make sure there's an excellent match. I mean, okay, let's just, a match between, firstly, what you want to achieve and then what the exhibitor wants to achieve. And because if you have a love of Japanese food, and trust me, in exhibitions this happens, but you get taken to all the Italian stands, dissatisfaction, correct? From a visitor perspective. And if you are there, but miss some of the key Japanese suppliers, missed opportunity. So it's really about that collection and the optimization and the automation is where the challenge lies.
I work in a digital department, so I would dare to say a little bit about data. So for our department, we have done a tremendous work with our current database. And in the first place, I would have never filled out the form, so I have to say respect. And secondly, what we have discovered once we actually went through our database, that there is a lot of invalid data. There is a lot of people who really don't have the patience to click on every single question and answer it and whatever. You just click others and then move on. And I think this is one of the biggest challenges, that you have to engineer the data in the first place once you collect it after the manual process. So I think for us, what we are trying to do is not only to get the right data, but also how to make it in a very enjoyable way for our users.
Next question.
Yeah, I was just curious what the selection process is going to look like for all the applicants. Sorry. I actually have another question then. It seems like a lot of the challenges are very specific. What if some of these solutions are a bit tangential or related more to the ecosystem of some of the specific ones that you mentioned? Does that go back to the selection process?
Actually, could you give an example? Because the thing is that any solution, to have a buyer, it needs to solve a problem. And basically the industry is sharing, these are problems that you have to solve in order for the industry to adopt your solution. Because without industry adopting your solution, you don't have a customer for your solution. So can you give an example of what you think is tangential?
Well, I was wondering, we would be maybe possibly able to co-develop a solution, or does it have to be kind of like an exact fit to the problems that you mentioned here?
The intention is for you to co-develop a solution with a MICE industry partner. So as Chi Chuan mentioned, we'll do an industry matchmaking later, and you'll be matched with a MICE industry partner to make an application for the grant and get the grant to co-develop a solution together.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, my question is actually for the panel, specifically Richard perhaps. Data collection, customer insights, and customer interaction. I used to be with banks, so I'm a digital expert, innovation expert for banking industry, and we all know what happened to the banking industry. All of a sudden, from finance, it moved towards customer focus. We call it design thinking. I just want to understand how ready is this industry to repivot from finance or number-based KPIs to customer focus? Because we can sit here and talk about solutions and platforms, and we can invest money and time, but are the strategic leaders inside the industry ready to transform or rather disrupt their thinking?
That's a good question. I would say two things. And again, I will talk about the exhibition industry more so than the MICE industry. The exhibition industry is a very fragmented industry, but there is some consolidation going on. And there are actually a number of companies these days that are actually quite large. And, you know, a large company has the capacity and perhaps desire to invest a lot more so than a small company. So, you know, in the last couple of years, quite significant consolidation, which creates larger entities with a desire to invest. So I would say, yes, there is a desire. Certainly in our company, customer outcomes is one of our key strategic priorities in our current investment cycle. And you know, we have a desire and a need. I think one of the things about trade shows, and this is just a very broad thinking, is, and this is not a clarion view, or it's not even my view, but it is well spoken about, is that we avoided the disruptions of the last 20 years in business media. Things are fine. Let's not invest. Everything's great. Just to share with you, the global exhibition industry is growing at 4.5%. It's growing at 7.5% in Asia. So, things are pretty rosy. That's great. But I think there is a feel that unless we understand our customer outcomes better, we could well be disrupted. And, perhaps we'll get disrupted by things we know, and perhaps we will get disrupted by definition of things that we don't know. So I think we think it's really important. We think it's really, really important that we get closer. And if that requires investment, we'll absolutely do it.
I'm sure all of you are wondering, how did they get an old bag like me to sit on the stage here to talk to all of you out here? Good afternoon. I'm the president of the Meetings Association in Singapore. You've had Beta here before. I think most of you out here, if I'm correct, are from tech companies. Am I correct? So, as a show of hands, would any of you know or understand the different disciplines that they've just spoken about? Because 3 of them are all 3 different disciplines. So I think that gentleman there asked a very good question. So unless you understand what our business is all about, the business models for each one of them are entirely different. There are, I would say, a commonality, and I think part of what Richard is speaking about is data. Whether through artificial intelligence to actually know what does your customer want and what your exhibitor want. For a venue provider like Mrs. Kong, she speaks quite Singaporean, huh? Not bad for a Polish. Yeah. It's a venue provider would then look at it a little bit different. So each of them that have presented issues for you who are wired differently from us, you all need to actually have an appreciation of our business process to be able to assist us with some of our specific issues. I do believe that there is a big opportunity to be able to find some common grounds and to be able to provide technology solutions for each one of our industries. So Ms. Kong is from a venue provider, dealing a lot with, if I may, exhibitions as well as meetings. Gerald, am I got your, Glenn, alamat, I got the G right, okay? Glenn is a agency that their first original history is a destination management company, which is dealing a lot in logistics. But you will see that companies like them will be very much more into design, as well as very much into, I would say, working very closely with the organizers to actually see that everything is being delivered. Richard, past life was that of a conference organizer, and today with Claren, he's very much, I think you still do some conferences, yeah. So what Richard was speaking about, I think, will be something that each one of them can use. You probably would need to contextualize it for each one of them. So from SASUS, from our membership, we do believe that technology is an enabler. For you tech geniuses, you will need to find the solutions that will not only assist each one of them, but actually all around the region for you to put the time to actually come up with it. I would say that it is very important, and again, I congratulate the Tourism Board for arranging something like this. As Richard just said, the exhibition industry is very fragmented. What he actually was talking about is the, sorry, I hope I'm not taking over, but I just, because when you ask me to speak, then it's forever she's speaking, but I do want to bridge the understanding because I think it's tremendous to have so many of you here. And I really would encourage you to actually get perhaps more involved with each one of them, or perhaps maybe connect with us at Sasios to help understand what can be done further, right? So a one meeting like this may not be able to solve, but one meeting like this will show you the potential of amount of businesses and solutions that you can help us with. So I hope that has already helped a lot, right? Can or not? Yeah, okay.
So, can I just add something quickly? Who's been to an exhibition in the last year? Hands up. Good. So this is an interesting one. You spent 7 minutes doing the, you spent 7 minutes very diligently, thank you for that, a few weeks before. When you went to the show, how long did it take for you to actually walk up, get your badge and go in? 20 minutes, half an hour? Okay, self-registration, good. But yep, but it's not always seamless. And that's, you know, that, and I'm not sure what the solution is. But there's definitely an opportunity to have a more, I get the data bit, very important. But you know, an average conference ticket is pretty high, you know, and to attend a show is quite a large investment. But the experience for the attendees is probably not matched by the price that they pay. I just feel there's an opportunity to make that a more seamless thing. And then I think, ironically, often the data we're collecting is pre-data anyway. Just out of interest, did you fill out a, did you do a evaluation of the show after you attended?
No, the show is this October.
Okay, okay.
And obviously, of course, I also interested to know how this stuff fed back to the exhibitors.
Well, that's the key, isn't it? We run defence shows around the world, and one of the nice things about running defence shows is that people come in their uniforms, so you can actually see where they're 2-star, 3-star, 4-star generals. It's not really technology-based, is it? But it's but in, you know, in other shows, you actually don't know who your VIPs are.
Next question.
I think a quick one, actually. You spoke about the various components, and you know, I spent at least the last 8 months from a technology perspective working with some of the MICE operators in the company. So it's taken some time to understand these individual pillars, such as the location, the event agency, the branded event, or the brand that comes itself, and the technology partner is one of it. Can you also share a little bit on the journey that you had with traditional technology partners? It could be the Siemens of the world or somebody else or somebody local. And what has and has not worked with, because even in your sector, you've seen a variety of technology and deployed a lot of it. Why has it been in silos, or what have some of the larger technology partners of yours who understood the industry still failed to kind of deliver, or, you know, and the reason we are here?
Okay, I'm going to say something really controversial. I've never really seen an event app that really does it for me, where people use it and say, oh my goodness, my life is better because I'm using this event app. Wow, I'm meeting buyers, I'm meeting sellers. It is really an incredible thing. You know, I haven't yet, you know, there's a lot of online information stored on an app, but I have not really ever seen a killer app. And for me, the killer app is about matching buyers and sellers, and about matching content requirements with content deliverers. And I've not really seen that. You know, people ask for it, but I've not really seen it. Now, I understand if you're a VIP, you don't want to be tracked down by every vendor. I get that. We have to respect both the privacy and also the space of all our VIPs. But I haven't really seen that killer app for our event industry.
Well, in terms of like general tech companies that we work with, we work with website developers who, for me, different. When I collect registration data, it's not for me to use, but for my client who owns the content. Like, it could be a conference or it could be incentive programs. But in terms of like, so it's pretty basic. I wouldn't want to say like there is compared to what Richard has just shared about matching buyers and sellers. I'm not looking at that aspect. But if you're asking me, like for example, a conference app like what he just mentioned, again, it serves its basic purpose. I see how sometimes it fails, mainly because there wasn't, in terms of like when the organizer use it, the publicity or how do you get people to understand and use it. If you have something but you don't market it, people don't know, then what's the point? So, but that's another aspect of things. In terms of how I see technology, being talked about so much, but actual implementation, value add, in reality, it falls flat. So that is my own experience in terms of like, to answer your question about it.
Right. So leaving aside the actual app itself, is there something in the process, like your long-term tech partners, for example, is there anything that they're not doing that leads to the outcome, which is an app that's not engaging, for example? Because these guys are coming in like blank slate. Tell us, how should we approach this?
I think one of our experiences is the fact that actually there is a lot of technologies there. So when you guide your customer through the digital journey, you enable so many different actually part of the software for them, right? So from the registration portal through exhibition app, then we are going over to the website and social media and whatsoever. But where I personally see the challenge is the integration and the technical side of deployment of technology. Because what I notice is that there are still a bunch of technology providers and microservices providers who don't look really beyond the horizon of their own scope of the product. They don't look at this side, how I'm going to integrate it, for example, with other type of software. And once we are going through the integration process, we discover, for example, that the data is not imported correctly. The data flow is interrupted. There are security breaches. There are problems with actually real-time communication. And there are those technical things which you can actually only discover along your journey because you are deploying different systems. But what I really would like to see from the technology providers that they also don't work in silos. They also look a little bit beyond their own horizon and see what is actually now in the market. Because as you can see, there is a lot of wonderful technologies like a blockchain, for example, which can be deployed in so many different contexts, but people maybe don't dare or maybe don't see this opportunity that if my micro app can actually deploy the blockchain technology and I will enable people to arrive at the exhibition hall and paid for the ticket within seconds and then make transaction not by actually dealing by bidding or something like this. This is something what is a great opportunity. But currently there is very little of this kind of cross-industrial providers who really look beyond their own horizon.
Sort of as a flip side to that question, when you go to China and you go to trade consumer shows, a lot of consumer show organizers do their registration via WeChat. All the data's there. And they do a very clever model. Basically say, pre-register, it's free. Turn up on site, and it's miserable to get in, and it's going to cost you 51. And it really works. Now, a lot of the exhibitors don't really mind without badges because it's a consumer show. It's not so important. But if people haven't paid beforehand, they can, or they haven't registered beforehand, they can do it almost immediately. Excuse me. So you almost don't need a registration counter. You don't almost need a registration process. But that is interesting for consumer because actually very little amount of data is actually collected. And people don't require badges. And it's all via codes to get in. It hasn't quite been translated to to business, but there's definitely something in that seamless process.
The best way to explain, I think, a couple of the questions that have been posed is that you're absolutely right that there are companies, tech companies, that concentrate on a specific service, and that really actually helps us to do things a lot quicker. For example, I think in the whether it's an exhibition registration or a conference registration or a meeting registration, there are several very good companies out there that is already providing it. Technology, I'm sure that those of you who are doing it, it's a journey, right? If we are using your telephone, if you got your iPad version 7 point something, some of which I'd be even scared to use, but you'll see that it is a continuing journey. I guess some of the requirements and the needs are to be able to get deeper. What Richard has been speaking about is that how do we actually give value to both to the VIPs or the person who's a trade visitor and that of an exhibitor. There are already systems in the registration that we call handshake. I'm an exhibitor and I like to meet clients from a certain area handling only a very niche market. How do I connect with those persons? So for all of you out here, if you are trying to assist us, that's the reason why I've asked you, how much of it do you know? And the best way for you to survive or to be able to make it worth your while is to take commonality and to actually sort of use it and integrate it, whether it's you API with, you collaborate with other tech companies that are doing, but you provide a segment. Right now, I think Richard's pain points is how do we get much more intricate information that brings speed, gratification, and value to both the exhibitor and the buyer, right? I think these are some of the things that you would need to ask. And I'm not saying this because STB is just to arrange it. There is a lot of opportunities, but for you to take the time and trouble, I would say it's very important that it's worth your while as well. So I would say understand the landscape, the horizons of what's available outside, and you might find the skill and the talent that you have, you can already collaborate with somebody that has something, but you have got a very good system on whether it is artificial intelligence or the data that you need to actually, and then I think this can actually work for you. I hope, again, I've helped. Huh?
Can I just... two more questions?
Yeah, sorry.
For tracking people indoors, can you share the size of the venues? I mean, for like indoor maps, etc., to assist the technology?
Venues, you mean the type of venues that I have problem, like challenges with?
No. For example, we're gonna track the VIP, right? And you said he's in the restroom, right? It's good for me to know the average, the indoor maps, so that, you know, should I use a radio to track people or should I use cameras? Whatever technology I'm gonna use.
Okay, you're talking about, I mean, I would say, I mean, in Singapore, in terms of like the huge venue space that we have, you'll be in the likes of like Marina Bay Sands. You know, if you're talking about the size, you look at whole of level 5, you know, or whole level 4, like the whole stretch. Big events will occupy, yeah. I don't have an exact number right now in my head, like how many square meters, square feet. Oh, yeah. I mean, okay. I guess it's not about, you know, how big or how small, but the whole point is like, you know, how do you track these people? Like, yeah, even.
But That's why I think Janet has emphasized previously that you really have to have a good understanding what kind of exhibitions, what kind of conference, and what kind of event the organizing is trying to make possible. Because, like, for example, like for Singex, right, we have expo venue, which is exhibition hall with a particular measurement. So you can theoretically map out the heat points very easily. But what actually Glenn mentioned is there is a lot of exhibitors who go to MBS, for example, for exhibitions, and this is a completely different setup. So it's a very customized and personalized solution. It depends on the type of the event which you're working on. There is no off-shelf solution for this.
Just to add to that, that means that, and also to the crowd, means that one solution is not meant to cover the entire industry for every type of event, every type of venue, or whatever. When you get to the industry matchmaking, when you partner with the industry partner, that's when you really learn very deeply how that solution solves their problem.
I just want to add on something that, I know it's a previous question that, you wanted to ask some of our experiences on why some of the tech companies or IT companies that we work and didn't work out. I just want to emphasize again about why understanding our processor is so important, because one of the personal experience, one of the frustration I have is that I felt there was always a lack of understanding, and that's why the costings or the projections of your services to us, to me, from my own experience, is not complete or transparent. Just for example, I do a lot of like registration systems, website development. So, and I already mentioned to them in the scope of service, I will require on-site printing services. So when the scope of service come, and perhaps they don't understand what is required on-site services, and when I further drill, then I told them, I need a printer, I need to have your IT setup, I need your laptops, I need your people there to manage data. Then they're like, sorry, I need to add in all this costs. And so it requires a lot of our prompting and and experiences to take out these things, but which also it become a hassle. And sometimes when you already submitted your code, trust me now, RFP, request for proposal from our industry, is crazy. It could be 3 days, and I may not, there's only so much time I can go and scrutinize, what you're going to provide me. So that's one of my frustration. So yeah, I just want to share this with you so that, to have the expectations, if we can work together, it really takes please help us by, tell us how can we help you more to understand so that you can help us once we work together. All right?
Okay. One more question.
Hi, and thanks STB again for the event. Great to see so many people. So I run a small design agency that moved from corporate marketing into the MICE industry sector. It's been fascinating to hear all of the problem statements today. From my perspective, one of the concerns I have is the time that it might need to start moving this debate forward, if it's in a community sense amongst all three of the stakeholders in this position, or individualistically per scene. The question, though, is that I can see where you guys have spent some time understanding the problem statements. I can also feel how solving those problems may be of some value to your businesses. What I'm struggling to see is, though, how that, on a sustainable basis going forward, how do you charge your customers? How do you charge going forward? And therefore, how do we create something that has a business model behind it that's sustainable as well? So solving the tracking of the VIP problem, yes, is going to be great for optimized operations, Glenn, but is that something that you can then add as a premium value-added service to the client that's buying your services? Understanding the matchmaking and having deeper insights into the forecasting and crystal ball future telling of the content in the future will help create better programs and curate better content. But being a design studio and working with content as its core, trying to convey the value or have the value perceived of content from my customers often is a big challenge, because valuing creativity itself is very subjective. The idea of then creating like a global or even a regional community for freelance contributions, I think's super strong, and there are already some pretty decent proxies out there already, like Gennaro, for instance, for video productions. So I think that's a core idea, but the twist on that is the cryptocurrency and the blockchain. I think that's really interesting to dig deeper into on that one. I don't have solutions to any of your problems. But I have I've got 22 years history in the industry working with machine-to-machine vehicle tracking, for instance. We've worked, we currently use freelancers to support my business because I can't afford to hire people on a 100% basis to get jobs done. So I can see all of the melee and the challenges and the discourse that occurs between the community of providers and not. I think we need to take on board the fact that often we come with point solutions rather than things that create a broader industry solution. So it might be addressed in the way that this is going to go forward in terms of process next, but that's probably my key question is, how do I decide in my very limited amount of time and resource that I've got to give into this, can I put my brain into this program, right? And can I put my team into this? Because I don't have the instant solution for you. I've got a whole bunch of things I'd say, hey, you check that out, or check that out, or check this out. That's been really cool. I think the industry proxy is like, looking for know your customer in finance and how that's changed that industry is probably a good thing. But so key question, how do I make sure that if I'm going to put some time into this, that it's going to be worthwhile for me and also clearly worthwhile for you guys too?
That's a tough question.
Sorry, that's why I asked it last. I think I alluded this when I took the mic, is that you have to try to make it worth your while. And if you find a solution that can be used by, I would say, the 6 disciplines in our business model, because exhibition is one of them, conferences, the incentive market, the events market, and the congresses. So for any of the discussions, if any of the technology solutions that you have can be, if you like, spread all across, it would make your time to invest in it. I would have to say that, if you look at our registration systems, it's only of companies of a certain size would not use an Excel sheet. They would need to do, if you're doing a conference for 1,000, some companies are still, for up to 1,000, they're still doing an Excel sheet, which is so archaic. But registration systems are so competitive out there that you have all of them having different ways of charging. If you take, it's quite similar to that of the hotel, whether you get a commission or you get a transaction sort of fee that they charge you for every booking that you've done. So I would say it does take a little bit of studying, but I think what Richard was alluding to in terms of, if you like, data analytics and being able to actually do that, I see that as the next upcoming very important factor for customer satisfaction and exhibitor. Now, that requires some thinking because it can be applied not only for the exhibition industry, but certainly for any of the trade shows apart from exhibition, tabletop events that you could actually do, and one-to-one business meeting. So the technology provides the speed to be able to actually match, therefore saving people time. You get to meet those that you want to meet, and even on a priority basis. And if you have the extra time, you can look at someone else. So I would say you're absolutely right as to whether time is money and whether it's worth your while. I would say the magic is what you've got to see is, and if you understand where we are, it says, if I did this, it can apply not only for the exhibitions, for the conventions, even for retail, or even for, you see, the market can be very big if you see what you can use. More or less, some of you would, I would say, come up with a tech solution where you collaborate with each other to use the understanding or the if you like, the source code for what you have to be able to modify it or API it and collaborate. For example, if it's registration can link with one-to-one business meet, can link with profiling, can link with further post, if you like, event follow-ups. Now, if you can work something out like this and you are able to provide one component, you can fix that in with a whole lot. So I would say it's technology solutions that can be applied across the board, and you collaborate with other technology for their own, what they provide, and you latch on. It more or less could be, if you know a C-Vent or another company's, how do you meet up with them and you see what they do and you says, look, this is what I have. And what I understand from the industry, this is what is needed. It definitely can be worth your while. I hope it's helped, but Richard mentioned it's fragmented from the exhibition when he was talking about the trade shows. Our business events industry is also very dynamic, complex, and fragmented. So it's not something that a one-time situation like this can help. Our association may be able to assist with a deeper dive in terms of the understanding. And I think it's very important because I do believe that there is an opportunity in technology solutions for our side of the industry. If I could just in final closing say this, is that one of the biggest headaches and pain points for all of us is with time poverty and with technology, patience is very lacking. Somebody sends a proposal or a request, they expect instant answers by one, not giving you a full detail of the brief, because you can't give an estimate of costs or a budget intelligently if it's not. And the other way around is they expect the answers in 3 days, or even less, 24 hours. Now, there could be a potential, and this runs across the board for anyone, a venue provider, which is Ms. Kong, a destination management company and agency, like Glenn or myself, and then for Richard in terms of exhibition. The difficulty we have is to be able to give what I would say a proposal that is well-defined, clear, detailed, and will at least still entice the other party who's looking at more than one destination. We could be competing with Thailand or something else, which price will always be an issue. But what do we do to make our proposal and the way it goes out to them to show them that we're professional, top of the class, and not only that, that we can deliver. Now, if we can come up with something like that, you will benefit out from that, and we will, because everyone needs it. And you contextualize it against the different industry. Again, I hope that this is an opportunity. I'll be very happy to engage, or can I donate Beta, who stood up here, her time, to actually engage with you if you need, and it'll be our pleasure to help you to bridge any of the further understanding with it. With that, I thank you.
Any of the panelists who would like to say a few words closing?
I was just going to say, one of the exciting things about the MICE industry, it is very entrepreneurial. There are a lot of startups, and I suppose from sitting in your seat, you don't want to back the person who does one event once. That's not very scalable for you. But there are a number of organisations that have a whole suite of events and are looking for global solutions, well, multiple event solutions. And I think that's an encouraging thing. But one of the things, and this is just an observation, where I think, and we've seen this elsewhere, and again, just back to the China example, I think payment, what's happened in China in payment is so revolutionary. I mean, I think it's ahead of so many other countries. I won't name them, but it's incredible that, you know, data points have come from desire to create payment solutions. And you know, if you have a look at the payment providers in China who are now offering everything. So back to the question at the back, you know, there are multiple applications based around very specific disciplines. So whether it's WeChat, they offer thousands of applications, exhibitions, you know, everything. But it's based around, you know, firstly it was communications, but ultimately the end game was really about payment. And I feel there's great opportunities in payment. You know, we recently had a show in China where it was quite a scary thing. We had to collect about 100 delegate things. We just brought an iPad and people just put their phone to the iPad and collected it. I mean, it's really quite inspirational. And then, so our data points with these people were really high. So I think payment's a really interesting thing because companies will pay to collect. Because collection is what keeps the cash flow of any business going. So if that's a little suggestion.
For myself, I actually wanted to wrap up by addressing one of the points that you just mentioned about, like, you know, are we able to bring this this value to our clients, you know, for the solutions they're providing. I definitely believe that if there is the value proposition that you guys are able to come up with is something that can benefit, solve some of these big impending problems. I don't see a reason why we cannot, pass this, make sure that this is something that I can, my client is willing to pay, as long as I can. It's always about justification, right? Think about it. Like 15, 20 years ago, there was no such thing as like pigeonhole, where where in the conference you instantly exchange question and answers effectively. But at this point, when it first introduced, then it was a boom, right? Like so many conferences just started coming. That's a little form of disruption, but nobody expected. Somebody visionary just see that picture and they created something, and everybody's paying for it. Clients are paying for it. We are charging for it. So, I mean, I look at it as an example. I hope that this could be an example to tell you that it's not. I don't see why having that value of making it profitable, something sustainable, is a question. It's about how do we get that value proposition, right? Yep. So that's it. Thank you.
Maybe my personal tip, how I work actually with different parties, because I've been trying to look for skills and technologies. And one thing which I noticed actually, that all of you, or most of you actually, has a very rich portfolio. You have a lot of different services, you have a lot of things which you can do, and this is because of the nature of the products which you're doing. You can just dock additional script, additional part of the software. And the one thing which we struggle a lot is information overload. We get a lot of actually proposals where people list down, I do this, and until we actually discover how we can apply all those technologies, it takes us a while. So I think in order to save your initial investment of time and energy, you should be very clear and very specific. Where do you think you can apply your technology for the mice industry? This is my personal recommendation, because even yesterday I spoke to one of the potential partners of mine, right? And I really felt that I came to buffet feast. They had so many different options and they have so many things which they can offer. And I just turned the table and I told them one thing. This is my project, this is what I'm looking for. Which part you think you can actually, which need you think you can satisfy? Which part you think you can actually take over and help me to develop further? And that was the moment they had, okay, let us go back and let us think about it. So please be clear what you're trying to offer. Thank you.
Thank you, panelists. With that, please thank Janet, Richard, Glenn, and Magda. Thank you. I'm sure some of you might still have some more questions and want to approach them for a chat. They'll stick around later. And so now what I'm going to do, thank you, panelists, thank you. Now what I'm going to do is actually go through the process and give you a few reminders of what's going on. So as I mentioned before, my name is Derek. My team at Padang & Co. and I, we're charged at actually running this particular competition. So let us go through the process with you. Right, so there are a few key dates that we want you to remember. So today is the launch of the challenge, and we're briefing you on the challenges itself. The next date that you got to remember is application date. So that's when you make an application, and we'll shortlist you to bring you to the industry matchmaking day, which is 16th of November. And at that industry matchmaking, you will be pitching and be partnering with a mice industry player to make a joint submission for the grant proposal submission, which is due 14th of December. So these are the key steps. Just to dive in a little bit more in terms of the application. So the application deadline, of course, as I said, is 15th of October. That's the submission deadline. And we do have an application template for you to fill in. And we do have email address. Don't worry about all this information. There's a lot of information here. I just want to quickly go through this with you. Look out for the email that we're going to send you with all this information as well. Right? Then I mentioned the next thing after you made a submission, and we're going to shortlist around 20 startups or 20 technology companies to go into the industry matchmaking, which is going to happen on the 16th of November. And this is where you get this opportunity to pitch to the mice industry, and then we're going to have a marketplace. where you can engage in one-on-one conversations with the industry representatives there, get some feedback, and very, very importantly, make connections that you can follow up on. Because the key objective of this is to pair you with industry partner and make a joint submission that go on to make a grant proposal submission. To help you with the pitching and the industry matchmaking, we're going to do pitch clinics. So like Magda said just now, many people who pitch to the MICE industry, or actually to any industry, a lot of startup or entrepreneurs sometimes get lost in the technology itself, and I can do 10,000 things, but perhaps doesn't really make the stronger connection to what the problem they're trying to solve within that particular industry itself. So the pitch clinics that we're going to do about a week before the matchmaking event, we're going to help you with that. So I mentioned the last step is the challenge process, is making a grant proposal submission. That's due on the 14th of December. That's before Christmas, as Chi Chuan said. We'll release more details later. And just as a reminder, this submission has to be made with a MICE industry partner after the industry matchmaking, right? In terms of the proposal shortlisting criteria, this basically is the criteria. Don't worry, again, there's a lot of information here. I won't read everything because all this information is downloadable from the website. If you don't know the address for the website, look out for an email that we're going to send you. There's a link to the website. By the way, again, all the slides that you've seen today, they're also downloadable on the website itself. So we'll be looking for desirability, innovativeness, and very importantly for this particular industry, feasibility. And for the last part is the company, the credibility of the company, the credentials, your track record experience, to the skills of the team. So it's in terms of the application template, again, I won't read everything. Basically, we just want to know who you are, what you do, how you do it, as well as what you're looking for, what you're hoping to do, especially in terms of the type of MICE industry partner you're looking to partner with. So in short, and as a summary, couple of things to remember. Application dates, the deadline is 15th of October. Save the date. MICE industry matchmaking is 16th of November. And that's the website link. It's a really long URL, so don't worry about keying that in. We'll send you an email with that, or you can actually just Google it. If you just Google, I think, tourism challenge for MICE STB, you should be able to get to that page. Right? I think that's it.